to start, you are currently the mastering engineer at Third Man Records, as well as running your own studio, Key Club Studio in Michigan, and you have your own electronics company.
I do. Yep, Skibbe Electronics.
Skibbe Electronics. Yep. So how does that happen? Did you 20 years ago, 30 years ago, even think you'd be doing, multiple things in the world of music?
Well, I had hoped so. My wife and I played in the band in Ann Arbor together in the early 90s. And we were the rhythm section, so we always held down the fort. Mm-hmm. We packed the van. I played drums, she played bass. So we packed the van. We drove the van. We rented the rehearsal space. So we were always kind of a team. And, back in 1994 or whatever, we thought we were just going to be a band. And then when our band broke up, we ended up deciding that we didn't want to be in a band anymore because we didn't want to have to deal with the singer, but we still wanted to, be involved in records and everything. And through kind of a series of slipping on banana peels, we both ended up in the music industry on the other side of the glass. So she ended up at Touch and Go Records doing radio promotion for Touch and Go in Chicago. And I ended up at Steve Albini's studio, helping build the studio. And we had recorded a record with Steve when we were in our band. And so he knew us and had called me and said, hey, you're handy, you want to come build a studio? And then we both kind of just ended up in the recording studio together through building that and finding that we knew so many bands from touring that it was really easy to get people to come in and work with us because they all loved our band. And it was just kind of an easy transition in. And we found that by about 1996, it was like, wow, this is great. We get to be in a band and make records, but we don't have to be in the band. You're there for the whole creative process and all of that awesome, songwriting and tracking and all of that. And you make really good friends, but you don't have to take care of the singer on a daily basis after that, And so it was really fun. And so, by about 1996, we were kind of thinking like, wow, this is going to be awesome. I never thought that I would end up in the studio. I didn't ever want to record bands when I was a kid. I took cinematography classes in college. And I had to take a recording class as part of this telecom curriculum. And I walked into the recording studio, and there was a guy in a wife beater with Italian beef dripping down his front, recording some horrible music, sitting in the dark in a foam-lined room. And I was like, I don't ever want to do this. I dropped out. Out of the class, even though I was like, oh, free recording time. I was like, this does not seem like a job that I want to ever do. I don't want to sit in a dark room and deal with this. No way. And then, so it was kind of a funny thing ending up in the studio originally. It just kind of all happened, it's all just banana peels. Life, you just slip and slip and slip and slip and slip and doors open that you never expected. And that's kind of how I ended up mastering as well, is that my wife, Jessica, and I had done a record with Jack, a Dead Weather record in 2008. And, we all kind of came out of the same scene in Detroit, even though we had left in the 90s and gone to Chicago, our band. We were milling around in that, early Detroit scene. Mm-hmm. And Jack first started out drumming. And so we were aware of all those bands from going back with friends and hanging out and seeing shows. So when the White Stripes came up, obviously we were right there kind of watching all of that happen and going, oh my God, I can't believe Detroit's going off finally. Mm-hmm. Detroit's a strange city musically because it's a real hotbed of creativity. It's like people will have these unbelievable bands that just blow your mind and you can't believe that it actually happened and it's just so cool. And then they're gone after 2 weeks. Like, what happened to the cool band you guys ran? I don't know. Got bored. Detroit was crazy because it had all these insane bands that would just happen and then go away and you'd be disappointed. Like, oh no, guys, it was so good. Oh. So we would always go back to Detroit. It was like a little secret weapon. You'd go back for records. The record stores are insane. Videos, because people are like hoarding crazy before YouTube crazy videos. And then you go and like top up on all the coolest, like new band trends. And anyway, we had kind of kept up with all the Detroit scene, had kind of followed everybody kind of coming up and we just kind of got thrown into that scene and kind of like I said, kind of a banana peel way. We had left Albini's studio in Chicago in 99 and built our place out in the country. And it kind of happened just all on accident. And I got a cold call one day from the Kills and from Jamie, the guitar player from the Kills, and he loved the mixing console that we had because we have a Flickinger console. And he had called me and said, hey, I was just doing a record in France at the studio, Black Box, that had a Flickinger, and I just love the sound, but I want to do a record in America, kind of a residential thing. Can we book your studio? And I was like, absolutely. And, you know.
And that's Sly Stone's.
That was Sly's desk, yeah. But I sold that. I sold it a couple of years ago.
Okay.
I had put it on Reverb and once again, on accident, a friend of mine worked at Reverb, and he said, I really want to do an article on the desk, on Sly's desk and your studio, but you have to list it for us to do the article. Would you do that? And I was like, sure, I'll put it up for some ridiculous amount of money. I don't want to sell it, you know? And then I got an offer I couldn't refuse, and it went to a really, really good home. And I was like, I was like, oh no, it happened. It was one of those moments where, oh shit, it happened. But I have another one. I had another one in the garage that was from a different studio called the Sound Pit in Atlanta. And Sound Pit did like Brick and Ripple and Hamilton Bohannon and the Counts, Mose Davis. It did all the Ted Nugent records. It did T-Rex, T-Rex record down there. I mean, it's got a long laundry list of kind of Atlanta bands that came through, and funk and soul and rock and roll bands. So it's cool. It's exactly the same desk, except it has a different routing section. So the channel strips and EQs are the same as the Sly desk. It's not as cool as having Sly's desk, but you know,
still functions.
Yeah, it still functions. And so I'm getting here. It's a long road. But your question kind of brings up the whole history of how we got here and how I ended up at Third Man. And you know, over the course of the years, we ran into Jack all over the place with him playing shows or stopping by or dead weathering, you know. And when we did that Dead Weather record in 2008, it kind of made sense because Allison from the Kills is a singer, and we had done 3 records with the Kills at that point. And she was just like, hey, you guys want to come down to Nashville and track this record? Jack, you know, Jack was saying, come on down. So we came down and had a blast making that Dead Weather record. It's the Sea of Cowards record. Mm-hmm. And then we just kind of kept in touch after that, you know, running into each other all over the place. And we had been out in LA at some point when the White Stripes did that Icky Thump record store at Tower Records, where they took over Tower, which was kind of the prototype for Third Man. It was before the Third Man thing had really happened in Nashville. And they took over Tower and then made it all White Stripes. And we went down to that. We were out making a record and went down to see it. It was just unbelievable. So I was always like, man, Jack, that's such a good idea. You should have one of these in every city, you know? And when he opened the Third Man thing down here, we were like, wow, good idea. And we had always been talking about, like, just over the years, like, man, oh, wow, you know, these things could be all over, just like that Tower Records thing. And then when Third Man, he started doing Third Man in Detroit, he called me up. Well, I called him actually, because I had some friends who wanted to do a club in Detroit. They had asked me to do kind of an annexed studio over there from Key Club. And Key Club's in Benton Harbor, which the Michigan map is like this, and Benton Harbor's on this side of the state, and Detroit's over on this side of the state. So it's a 3-hour drive across the state. So my friends were like, hey, you want to build another Key Club or like just a little annex over here in one of these buildings we've got? And I was like, yeah, sure. Sounds cool. So somehow I ended up calling Jack for something. And I was like, hey, man, I got it. You know, I emailed him and I was like, hey, I'm doing this thing. Maybe we should talk about starting a studio. I know you're opening Third Man over there. I don't know if you have any studio ideas, but maybe we could collab on something. And he called me. He was like, yeah, you know, I'm not really interested in collabing on a studio. You know, it doesn't seem like something we want to just jump into. And then we talked for a long time. He's like, you got to go by Third Man. Then he goes, hey, you want to start a studio? And I was like, Jack, I just asked you if you wanted to start a studio. What are you doing, man? And he's like, just go by Third Man and hang out with Ro, the manager, and he'll show you what I got in mind. And so I went in and they took me back to the room and there was a complete mastering studio. And I went, oh, I see what you're saying. You want to start a mastering studio. Okay. I don't have to hang out with bands anymore on a daily basis. Okay, sure. Yeah. Sounds like fun. So, you know, and there was this beautiful Neumann lathe sitting there, you know, Neumann VMS 70 in mint shape. And I was like, so I get to cut lacquers too. Like, yeah, great. Awesome. I have very limited lacquer cutting experience, but is that okay? Yes, it's okay. I have a Reco cut, which I've always cut records on, you know, but it's a mono 50s record cutter. And I've always cut lacquers for bands as a parlor trick. Come in and we're like, hey, let's cut this to this old, silver tone lacquer blank and play it out on the turntable and see how it sounds. It's for fun. But, we got a good crash course on cutting and just moved back to Detroit, started kind of delving in. And I had always, done mastering. You do occasionally do mastering over the years for people when you produce records. It's like something that happens. And so it was fun to get in on all the equipment over there and, have a Soundtech and esoteric limiters and a ton of Manley mastering EQs and just everything at your disposal. And the studio the mastering setup had come from Roger Seibel's place, SAE, out in Arizona. And the funny thing is that I had used Roger over the years quite a bit for mastering records that we had done at Key Club. I was very familiar with all of the gear. And my friend John McIntyre from Tortoise had used Roger an awful lot, was out there all the time with him mastering records. So it was kind of like almost 20 years of knowing the gear from sending records out to it. And I was like, oh, here it is. Now I get to mess around with it. So yeah, that was a long story, but that's how I ended up in Detroit.
Gotcha. Well, it seems like everything you're saying, slipping on the banana peel metaphor, is it doesn't seem like you had a resume or to get from one spot to the next. It might have been a conscious decision. So are you just learning on the job with all this? Is it just about trial and error, absorption, testing these different things out, talking to people, having mentors? Like how does one have that confidence to come into a new situation and know that you're going to be able to step into that role?
Confident. That, I guess it's just, the way that I always think about it is it's kind of like microphone collecting. Life is like this idea of accumulation, And so when you've accumulated enough experience in something, I imagine it like a bucket, right? Or it's like full when you've got experience, and then adding something else just causes it to overflow. So you're not like starting at the bottom each time. When you start out buying microphones at the beginning of starting a studio, you're like, oh no, how am I ever going to get a microphone collection? I've only got like 357s and like some other weird thing I found at the thrift store,
right.
Like 34 of them. And then after years of collecting them, you've got piles of them. So when you make a purchase of one mic, you spend like $2,000 on a mic. It's like, oh great. It just goes into the pile and it's all overflowing and it doesn't feel weird. When you don't have anything and you buy that one $2,000 mic, you're like, shoot, I could have gotten 4 other ones or whatever. And life, I feel like, is kind of like that. It's like once you start to compile things, you just start to rely on the fact that you've had successes in the past. And so when you throw yourself into something, you're just like, well, I've succeeded before. I could fail at this. Oh, well, I got to try. There's only one way to get through this, and it's forward. And you just go into it and go, I'm going to do the best I can. And that's all I can do. And very rapidly, you'll be okay, And so like with lacquer cutting, that was a daunting task, which is like, oh my God, I'm old. I've been in the studio forever. Throw me on a tape machine. No problem. I have no fear. I'll dive in. Doesn't matter. You want me to, design a session for you and start, from the beginning, produce a record and come out on budget. Okay, no problem. But cutting lacquers, if you're like, okay, here goes nothing. I don't know anything about the lathe. There's barely anybody to call. There are no spare parts. And if you break it, it's super expensive and you're out of production, And so you just go in cautiously. And I just tried to go into like the lacquer cutting side of it. I mean, mastering is great coming from record producing and mixing, because all you're doing is dealing with a stereo track and you're just trying to make it sound better and not ruin someone's record. And so if you've been in production and you understand like getting into the vibe of something, you can kind of hear the patina that people may want on it. So you're not like, oh, I'm just going to gloss this up. If it comes in and it's kind of like got kind of a retro vintage vibe to it, you're trying to keep it in that realm. And you're understanding what that, like, maybe that dark 70s sound is like that people are going for. And you're trying to stay in that without, widening it to high heaven and like brightening it up. And like, and I've had so many records ruined by mastering. And I'm very sympathetic to the way that things come in, like trying to get into that vibe where I'm not stepping on somebody's whole entire feel, and and so that the mastering side of it is actually fun and easy from the production stage, because you've gone through the process a million times making records where you're like, send it off, and you come back, you're sitting on your couch in the control room. When I listen to mastering that I get back from someone when I worked on an album, I sit on the couch, I do something dumb, I try not to pay attention, and I see if I can get through the record and feel excited, or if halfway through I'm mad and it's grating on me, I want to turn it off. Because when I sent it out, I could sit on the couch and I was loving it, and I just wanted it to be like normalized so all the songs fit together, maybe some scrappy muddiness cleaned up. I didn't want it like widened and folded in, vocals moved from where we had them, you know. So I kind of feel the same way about like mastering. When I sit down to do a record and mastering, I'll listen to the songs and kind of get the picture of where people are going and kind of imagine what their influences may have been and kind of where I see it ending up. If it's a dusty country, kind of canyon country record, or if it's like some modern pop banger or hip hop thing, you just got to get in a different mindset. That's easy.
Is it up to the artist, you, or the communication between the two of you to kind of confirm that? I think,
well, what I try to do, because I like to be inspired, I try to go in my direction with it before I start asking for too much direction. And I try to get something out to people and then hear feedback right away. And I do it, and I've done that over the years just from remote mixing sessions. Where I go like, okay, I'm going to go in on this the way I want to go. And I'm going to go and just see where I can take it and try to do it justice. And that keeps me in a creative headspace, so that when I'm working on it, I'm not like just executing tasks or guessing. If we were in the same room while we were mastering, it's harder in one way because you've got conversations going on. And then as an engineer, you're not as apt to try something and fail in front of people. And so you're a little bit safer, and then you're relying on instant feedback. So you could do something, play it back, and go, what do you think? I prefer not to master with people in the room, because every time I've gone into a mastering studio over the years, if I haven't been there repeatedly, I'm just like, I don't know what it sounds like in here. It sounds great. I don't know. I don't know this room. I have no idea. It's the first time I've ever laid ears on anything in here, and now I'm trying to get used to it. Don't know.
That seems to be a common theme now that I think we're at a point, even listening to a lot of what Jack was talking about with his latest album and doing a lot of the cutting through Pro Tools and kind of, abandoning that maybe what he prior to this year wouldn't have touched or wouldn't have done, and just accepting that the merger of the technology and the analog, when it comes down to it, they're still just tools, and just being able to get rid of all the fancy stuff, like you said, just feel it out and just be able to zone into the music or into the tool is really, perhaps something that we're realizing as humans that is more important than the technology itself. And I guess my question would be, how do you see that as somebody that works in a place that's so ahead of its time, but also so aware of the past and the history of analog technology and kind of a renaissance to the fact that vinyl is as popular as it's ever been?
Well, I think it's funny because I think that when you start to go in to technology, the immediate response is, awe because of what it can do. Like right now, Zooming, sitting outside, and we got our video phone like the Jetsons. And I remember seeing the first time someone Zoomed, it was Franz Ferdinand. They'd come into the studio and they were Skyping or something, somebody back in Scotland in 2004 or 5 or something. And my wife was like, oh my God, the future's here. We're like video calling overseas. I remember long distance phone bills,
All right.
But, your first, experience with new technology is, whoa, this is awesome. I've got GPS on my phone. I can just listen to music. And then once you become acclimated to it, you realize that the experience is deeper than just having something on demand. It's the difference between fast food and the farm to table, restaurant. It's like you go into the farm to table and somebody has curated the dishes for you, and they've thought about all of the elements of flavor and everything on a level, and health and presentation and the atmosphere. And fast food, it's got the flavor, but the health and, it's like, it's two different sides of the coin. And that's digital, like all the modern conveniences of of the computer is like the fast food hamburger, and the tape machine is like the fancy meal that you get at some curated artisanal farm to table restaurant. And I think, like, you know, there's a symbiosis in between it, and you can kind of straddle both, you know. Mm-hmm. You can enjoy going out to for a Chick-fil-A, you know, it's mm-hmm. exciting, and it has its merits too. And I think, like, digital for Jack, it's really interesting because he's a guy who just makes decisions in the studio. It's really fun to work with him because he's really very immediate, and his decisions are like absolute. Like, he just decides. That was the one. That was a great take. I love the guitar tone. I don't like the guitar tone. Let's work on it, you know. And then from an engineering standpoint, that's super fun because you're moving as fast as you can move, and then drawing on all of that bucket full of experience mm-hmm. to just, here goes nothing. Got to make it happen. I had 5 minutes to set up. Here we go. Press and record, you know. And these records were not just digital. I mean, some of the songs we tracked on tape, fully on tape. And we did transfer into the computer in the end, but just to keep it so that we could do recalls on mixing easily. You know, we use Burl converters in here. We've got the Burls, the Bad 8s. And I love the sound of those things. They're like the closest thing you can get. That's the most analog digital you could get, you know? So I don't mind going in through transformers on those things. They sound unbelievable. So, you know, it was like, I mean, Third Man, I'm happy that we went computer. I mean, I went computer in 2005, around 2005, pretty late in the game, actually, on HD at Key Club, because I had a Fiery Furnaces record that came in, and it had been started on computer, and I needed to mix it. And it was, here goes nothing, buy in the computer. And we were, you know, Albini camp, total analog studio. Mm-hmm. And once I got digital, I found, wow, this is great, because now I can, I have all this analog vintage gear, but it's not a detriment in any way. Like, something breaks, we've got backup to fix it in some way, shape, or form. So I lose a channel on the console, or it won't route to track 16. No big deal. I just change my input, leave it on track 15, you know, and it just made everything easier. And as long as you're a decision maker, mm-hmm. you know, the digital stuff it's great because you just make your decision. And you start making those decisions at the beginning, and you're still working the same sort of way, except that I don't have to throw away that section of tape when I cut it out. It's just hidden. And if I wanted it back mm-hmm. for some reason, I could just get it back. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I think that there's room for all of it. There's room for all of the digital and room for all of the analog. And it's about inspiration. Like records, why they are coming back, it's because they're physical, tangible, real deal things, and they're a commodity. You can't sell your MP3s. Right. It's money and it's like, you know, all the apps. I have a kid, and she buys, like, you know, $1 apps all the time, and I must have $300 in $1 apps that we don't use anymore. You know, I can't do anything with them. They're just junk. I just wasted the money out the window. And, you know, a record, you buy it, and some of them increase in value exponentially. Mm-hmm. Some of them, like there's a joke in Detroit about Detroit Clean Funkadelic records. Detroit Clean copy is like, you know, it's been on the floor, used as kind of like ice skates, you know, but it still plays. It still plays, you know, right. And the jacket's moldy and ripped, but it's still there, and you get them, and, you know, you're like, oh, Detroit Clean copy. I mean, they have been used and partied for, you know, almost 50 years, and they still work. And so you've got this, like, the idea of, you know, I would say, like, there's an artisanal element to diving back into all the analog stuff, but there's just a tangible inspiration when you put a record on. Mm-hmm. It's weight, and it goes round and round, and it's this magic thing. It's 3-dimensional translation of this digital stuff back into 3 dimensions. And for vinyl, if I could rip something off YouTube and cut it to a lacquer and play it back, and it sounds better. Mm-hmm. Hands down, everybody agrees it sounds better. I think it's the translation into 3 dimensions again. It's come back into our world. It's out there in the virtual world, and then it becomes reality again. Right. You know, and it has weight and mass, and it's subjected to physics, the laws of physics, you know, and all of that we're very used to. We've developed over millions of years to live in that world. And, you know, vinyl, why is vinyl better? Well, it's not better frequency wise, it's got all kinds. You got to do all kinds of things to get records to fit on the platter. And to talk about record making, it's like it's one of the strangest formats, because the length of the program material determines how loud it's going to be and how much bass is going to be in it, because you only have 3 3/8 inches to put it on an LP per side. That's it.
And where it is, right? Whether it's the first song or the fifth song, right? Closer to the...
It's got to fit in there.
Yeah.
And the longer your side, the more we have to do to it. Because we're not. There's no more space.
Right.
You have to cram it in. And so why does a record always sound better? Even if it doesn't sound frequency wise better, why does it sound better? And I think it's because of all of the asymmetry to it. It's like right now I'm sitting outside, there are birds chirping, insects, leaves, rustling, and we're living in this kind of cacophony of asymmetry of sound. It's got depth. And when you go outside in the winter, what is it like? It's like a barren wasteland.
Quiet, right?
What does it feel like? It feels dead. And that's digital. That's straight digital. In the silence of digital, there's nothing. There's nothing. Right. And in the silence of vinyl, there's all these pops and ticks and asymmetrical distortion happening, and just all kinds of things that our ears and our body is attuned to. And so when you put that on, you're feeling that life in 3 dimensions. I think that's why it feels better, just universally.
Amazing.
But,
yes.
But like this company, I'm happy that we're doing things like in both realms, because it means that, somebody's got to wave the flag and say, hey, all of this investment in music and technology of the past is still valuable. It's valuable. It's exciting and interesting. We don't want to see it go away. I mean, the other day I had gotten a Polaroid land camera out from my house. We were packing stuff up, and I found an old Polaroid, bellows kind of land camera that uses like 667 film, the black and white film. And I went on eBay and I was like, I'm sure somebody still makes this stuff, or there's got to be some out there. And it's like, oh my God, from the last time I had this thing out until now, nope, it's gone. This thing is totally worthless unless you want to pay $150 for 10 pictures, Right. And it was sad. It's sad to see it go away, because it was so rich to be able to pull one of those Polaroids out and then wait till it developed and peel it off and be like, oh, look at this cool photo, and to think that that's just gone.
Right. And that's the experience of it too, right? So on top of the actual being the physical reality of it, it's that experience that I think one thing that myself as a fan of music, why I buy vinyl is like, having that, you're putting it on the turntable, you're sitting down, it changes your relationship to the music. And I think there's always going to be a balance of both those things. And it's great that you can have your phone and you can take a walk and that song is with you and great, but it's that music experience that maybe we forgot about or we lost for so long, that now that it's coming back, it's just great. And just seeing what obviously Third Man and the vinyl resurgence is just very hopeful for the future.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that as we go into digital and we go into the metaverse and we go virtual reality, there's going to be more appreciation for things that anchor you into 3 dimensions and the richness of life. It's like looking at a mountain. You never get tired of looking at a mountain. You go to feel the awe of that thing, or seeing an animal, a wild animal, like I saw a peregrine falcon fly over earlier.
Wow.
It's amazing, or like there was a cottonmouth in the yard yesterday, a giant cottonmouth, and the fear that you feel from seeing a giant poisonous snake slithering, the movement, it's just so visceral and primordial, all of those things that were great and still are great, like record pressing. And that's one of the nice things about Third Man in Detroit, is that we've got the cutting room right there and then the pressing plant right next door. And so, if we have a quality control issue, the QC guys will come in and say, hey guys, we're having this problem on the presses. What do you think it is? We'll throw it back on the lathe and look under the microscope, or go out and consult with them and be like, yeah, I don't know, and it's really fun to try to track stuff down. I mean, making records is not easy. It's it's a dirty process where you cut the lacquer, send it off. It has to get electroplated. And then it comes back as a stamper and gets put on. So there's a lot of stages in between that things can happen.
Sure.
plating companies always blame the lacquer cutters, and the lacquer cutters always blame the plating houses. But I always say this: what's dirtier, you know? Me cutting a lacquer on my nice clean lathe in a nice clean air conditioned climate controlled room, and I'm all like careful, or a plant that's got to spray this thing with like liquid silver and then dunk it in a tank of nickel, you know? Where's it going to go wrong, guys?
Right.
It's not me, but it can be sometimes. Sometimes lacquers are bad and you can't tell. There'll be like a bubble under the surface that you can't see. And then when it gets to plating, something happens, like it ruptures or it just off gases, you know, and it causes like silvering is what they call it, where it's just like, you know, it doesn't grab. And if you look at it under the light, it looks kind of like silvery. So there's all kinds of crazy things that happen.
And you see with, you know, resurgence of vinyl and everything, that all those processes and the steps and the people and the places, is that turning into more options for, you know, the process and in a way, for better or for worse, because if you have more options, you might run into more issues, but in the end, it's trending in that direction.
Yeah, there are more options for sure. There are more options. I mean, it's great every time, you know, you would think that your natural inclination, if you own a record pressing plant, is, oh no, another record pressing plant opened up. That's competition. But it's really funny because every time one opens up, everybody within the system here at Third Man, it's like, great, another record pressing plant opened up. That means that the industry is coming back, you know, and great, we can get these lead times down. And it's just, you know, compounded by the supply chain problems. Jack's tour is named the Supply Chain Issue Tour because we kept joking the whole entire time leading up. It was just like the most cliche thing. It would be like, so can we get this done? Well, I mean, like, supply chain issues. Okay. You know, and, you know, it's funny because we even had to get the record done early to get in line to get the record done. You'd think a guy who owns his own record pressing plant would like jump to the front of the line, but we had to get these records done to get them out on time so long ago. It was crazy. I mean, I had them cut, you know, last year to try to get them ready to be released on time, you know, and we had to slot into the same line everybody else did, which I was like, wow, this is crazy. You know, you build your own plant.
You still can't. Still can't get ahead of it.
So it's, you know, it really is at this point, it's amazing. But the only problem right now is that there are not lacquers out there.
Right.
So the whole industry is propped up on one lacquer manufacturer. And,
is that in Japan? It's overseas, right?
MDC. And the good thing about it is the MDC lacquers are the best in the world. They always were. They're the cleanest. They sound the best. The quality control is great. And you very, very, very rarely get a bad batch. And it's funny, since the crisis has happened, I don't think early on there was a bad batch that came out, and it occasionally would happen in the olden days before Apollo burned down. But since the pandemic happened, the lacquers have been just, and I don't even have any wood to knock on, but
I got you.
It's been great. It's been great. Like, whatever they're doing, they're like taking it very seriously. And the lacquers have been just great. They've been cutting great. They haven't been throwing chip. Everything's been smooth. It's been great. I mean, I haven't been rejecting any of them just on look. Sometimes you get them in, when you get a lacquer box in, there's usually 25 of them in a box, and they're stacked up with little spacers, and every other one has a rubber ring around the outside, and they come packed with this like wrap around the edge. And so when you take a lacquer out of the box, they smell great, by the way. They smell like the olden days, you know. Like if you've ever opened a camera box, an old camera box, it's got that like, ooh, what is this crazy dark like smell to it? That's another thing about, I'm going to go off on a tangent again, but that's another thing about records that I love. And you know, you go to a used, and this is a little over the edge, but you know, when you go to a record store and you buy records, I always have to go to the bathroom. I don't know what it is. But because maybe it's the mold in the record or something, you know, just, it's like a trick. Maybe it's my excitement, you know, but it universally happens. And I think it's funny because when you pick up a record, there's a smell to it too. There's like a smell of the jacket, you know, there's all kinds of, sometimes there's a coffee stain on it. Sometimes somebody's annotated which songs they like and which ones they think are horrible. Sometimes there's like a little name still on it, like Cindy with a heart over the eye, you know? And you pick it up and you've got this whole like experience of like, wow, this has gone through hands. This has been part of somebody's life. This is three-dimensional. It has weight. It has smell. It has all these things. It's the same thing about a lacquer. When you open that lacquer box and you take out the lacquer, it's got the lacquer smell, you know, and you take it out and you have to look at it. You have to sight the top in the light to see if you've got a smooth surface on it or not, if there are any, you know, unnatural blemishes in it. Sometimes there'll be a wave where the lacquer isn't completely smooth, and I always bounce those for like reserve, just in case I need one production on it. And so you've got this whole process of like, you know, it's like smelling the wine. When you get a fancy wine, they want you to smell it, you know. Yeah, it's great. Yummy. What are you going to say? No, take that. But you know, the lacquers, you're doing the same thing. You've got to kind of like proof them before you put them on the platter, you know. And it's this whole crazy experience. So it's really, you know, like you got to have the weight of them. The box is really heavy, and it's cool. It's all around. It's like this is the whole process is like immersed, you know. Anyway, the lacquer thing is, when Apollo burned down, it was like, oh God. Ben Blackwell called me. He's like, did you see Apollo burn down? In the morning, I was cutting something. I was like, yeah, I saw that. Oh, that's going to be bad. Hung up. And about an hour later, it hit me. And I had to call him back. I was like, oh my God, it burned down. Well, wow. What are we going to do? This is insane. What's going on? And we were both just like, it took us like an hour to process what had just happened, you know, just sitting there as I'm cutting, just thinking about it. And then all of a sudden I just had that like panic attack where you're like, oh my God, your mouth goes dry and you're like, oh no.
So why are they the only one? I mean, you know, I know that the fire, that was a big thing. But is it the process? Is it like, I mean, there has to be with all the, you know, the other parts of the vinyl process. I mean, that's so important.
Why were there only two? Well, because vinyl production had been trending down for decades. Mm-hmm. And so a big, giant, dirty, environmentally unfriendly business like a lacquer company making nitrocellulose lacquer products isn't something that most sane people would invest in.
Gotcha.
And so Apollo had acquired Transco at some point in the 90s, I think. Transco was like, I think they were in New Jersey. Transco was out there, and Apollo was in California. And Apollo, I think, had come out of Capitol Records. I think Capitol had owned them at some point. Mm-hmm. And so they were Capitol Audio Disc, and then I think they went Capitol. I could be completely wrong. Don't quote me on that. I don't remember. I'd have to look it up. But Apollo had something to do with Capitol, and Capitol had something to do with Audio Disc, which was the old-fashioned company out there. Transco was from the East Coast, and at some point Apollo bought Transco and moved them out there. And so they had kind of assimilated into one lacquer-producing company sometime in the 90s when all of the business had kind of fallen off the table. And, you know, at some point, I mean, even in the early 2000s, it was novelty. I mean, we were still doing it through like the Albini camp and the Touch and Go records, and all the indie records everybody was still putting out vinyl because we were nerds, mm-hmm. you know, who believed in it. And, you know, when you go on tour and you're in your indie band, having a 7-inch on tour is like, you know, that's your currency. That's mm-hmm. how you make it every night. And that's how people get exposed to your band. So they would come up to the merch table and for $3 or $5 buy a 7-inch. Mm-hmm. And I heard tons of bands that way, like the band Modest Mouse. They played Lounge Acts in Chicago as an opening act for somebody else I went to see. And we were hanging out afterwards. And I was talking to Isaac from Modest Mouse at the merch table. And he just he's like, man, I'm out of covers, you know, jackets for our 7-inches here. Take this. And I took it home. And went, oh my God, this band is great. You know? And it was funny because it's like, oh yeah, that became Modest Mouse. It was their first 7-inch. And you bought it on tour and it was like, there they went. And it's cool. And like those first White Stripes 7-inches, man, if you have one of those, hot dog. Anyway, yeah, I wish somebody would come out with new lacquer production because we would be
less supply chain issues.
Oh, well, we would be, it's all propped up on MDC right now. And if something happens to them, what are we going to do? You know?
Well, Bill, I know you got to go because it's almost 10 o'clock your time. I just had a question more for maybe just having your experience over the years and just kind of seeing what has worked for bands and just, you know, any advice for bands that are kind of floating around doing their thing, you know, in the indie world and just, you know, having that faith that what they're doing is the right thing.
Geez, that is actually a good question because, you know, you see from making records a lot of times, I guess one of the things that I think about that I've experienced, and this is not very indie to say, but I think it's something that if you see bands that are successful, you kind of see it happening. And it's like some of the pitfalls that I see with bands is that there's a lot of infighting that happens on a basic level, just because people are trying to get their own creative juices into, or their creative ideas into the music, you know? And so there's a competition, and there's a lot of healthy competition that can happen in that way. Like you see bands that work well if there are multiple songwriters in the band, is that they're competing with each other to write a song, kind of like a Lennon McCartney, George Harrison kind of thing. And that whole Beatles movie that just came out, we could talk for years on that because it was so exciting.
Anytime.
because it's so real. I mean, that Jeff Emmerich, the Glenn Johns thing where you're like in the room and you don't have enough time to set up the mics and everybody's like, come on, let's go. I mean, that's just, everything in there is so real for making records. It doesn't matter what level you're on. And at least in that, you're like, well, at least it's the fucking Beatles. So, you know, any annoyance or weirdness or craziness that's happening, it's like, it's the Beatles, but it happens on all levels. But I was going to say, you know, the competition that happens between songwriters in a band is great if you channel that into writing the song. So I've seen bands come in that have writing pairs, and the ones that are the most successful, it'll be like, if the one guy is singing on the other guy's song or has to play on the other guy's song, they're going to try to do the best job they can, because they're going to try to show off how good they are in the song good. You know what I mean? And then vice versa. So they're competing to make great songs. They're not competing to undermine each other's songs. They're like going for it in there and doing their part. And then the end result is they have great songs, and they're competing to see who can write a better song. And it's awesome. That works really well. I find that the infighting competition is one thing that is it just hobbles you immediately, you know? And then that translates into something else, which is no matter how artistic your band is, or how indie your band is, or how serious your band is, it's a business. Your band is a business, and you have to treat it like a business. You're not just, I don't care, making songs. You're developing a product, and it's okay to prototype the product and then revamp it at any point when you see that you're getting feedback that's not working.
Right.
And for running the electronics company, I'm telling this to my daughter all the time. I'm like, don't get discouraged on the first thing that you put up. Take it back down, rework it, find all the problems. You're on a journey of discovery here. And it's, you know, you're never going to lose until you quit. So put it up, take it down. It's a process of prototyping. And it's the same thing for bands. It's like, I don't know how many times bands have come in and they're like, this song just sucks, it doesn't work. It's like, guys, we're not stuck with it like it is. We have the power to rewrite songs immediately, you know? Let's do it. Who's happy with the drum beat? No one. No offense, drummer. It's probably the first thing you played. It is. Great. Well, let's work on it. You know, let's think about this. We're at a point, we've got money in the bank. We got other songs done. Let's just focus on this one and get it written right and make it happy for everybody, because it's going to be fun. One of the things that I see in the studio is you spend the most time on the songs that aren't working. You're spending too much time on a song. There's something inherently wrong with it on the design level. And so you need to get back in there and fix what's wrong with it, you know? And then everything will happen easily, because when songs are working, they just happen. You know, you're not exerting too much energy. And you'll find when you've recorded a ton of records, you go down the line, you're like, this one's not working. We're having so much trouble with it. What is it? It could just be that the key, it's not in the right key for the singer. You know what I mean? They wrote it in the wrong key. It could be something as simple as that, or it could be like, it needs a bridge, or it doesn't have a chorus. You know, it's funny. And once you start to go like, oh, it's okay to put it up and take it back down, not stuck with it. Great. And I see bands do that all the time. They don't treat it like a business. They're like, this is just art. I don't care if it succeeds. You're like, no, you do actually care if it succeeds, or you wouldn't be doing this.
Right.
You want to get up on stage and have people like you. Everybody wants that, whether it's just like, I don't care or not. That's what you don't want to go up and have everybody hate you, you know? So it's not true. It's not true. Once you start to think about it like that, you're like, oh, well, what moves would we do to make sure that we're successful? And one thing I always tell bands is I'm like, hire the people to help get your band out there that work for bands that you like and you want to be at the, you know, so you look and you go, this is a band we're like, and they're at a level we'd like to be at. Well, who helped them get there, and how did they get there? So you go and you hire the team of people that got them. You might hire a publicist to do publicity for your band that did the same one for the band you like. And if you're picking people that you kind of fit in with already, the people that you hire are going to know exactly what to do with your band. They're going to be able to put you in exactly the right spot, And that this is all, of course, if you're not just like, you're not just playing open mic night or whatever. This is like if you play shows and go on tour and make records and like be on a label or, it's just about designing. It's just about like picking the right path, and it's all out there and it's easier to do than ever because you've got email, you've got TikTok. You can make a TikTok and that can blow your band up. I mean, there's so many different avenues. You don't have to even have a publicist anymore. You can just hire a kid who does good TikToks. I mean, I've seen it happen.
Yeah.
It's great. And so but it's just about taking it seriously and realizing that you can make your art and you can do whatever you want creatively, but you just kind of have to think about it in an organized way. It's not just going to happen to you magically. It doesn't just happen like we just do this. I mean, I remember being in a band when I was a kid and just going like, I don't care. I'm not going to think about it. I'm just going to play it's just going to happen. The finger of God's going to come down and say, yes, you made it, But you start to see that over the years, bands that are successful have a certain work ethic and they say yes a lot and they're happy when they go through doing it. It's not easy making records. It's super stressful. You're exposed as an artist. You're singing and playing and then you're going to be judged. It is a leap of faith making a record and it's not easy to finish them. It's very difficult. And so I'm sympathetic to that. But if you've put those things in place that are like, where you've got, that's one thing, that's the creative side, but you've also got this like direction that's very like serious and focused. You make less missteps along the way and it becomes easier. Fun is part of functional, you know what I mean? It's in the word functional. Yeah. And so the more functional your system is, the more fun it is. It's fun to have backing and money to make a record. It's fun to go to a cool studio and like indulge in all the gear and equipment and get into it. It's fun to think about your band 24/7. And that's what you should be doing as an artist. You got to get in that space of like thinking about your band, thinking about music. It's a like laser focus. And how do you get there? Well, you make the right choices up front to take it seriously. And then you don't torture anybody else along the way. You come in, you're organized, you've worked out all your band fights on the back end. Everybody's moving in the same direction,
Right.
It's crazy. It's really just, my wife always said it. She's like, recording is pretty easy. It's like 10% technical and it's 90% psychological, making records. And it's just, I think it's just having that kind of just a tiny bit of organization and seriousness about it. Because, if you made a product, like if I made a product, I wouldn't just make a new piece of gear and just go like, oh, well,
that didn't work.
Yeah. I don't care. Here, This is it. It's got a bunch of problems, but I don't care. I'm going to torture you with it, And no one's buying it. Well, why aren't they buying it? Oh, because they're lame. You're like, no,
get it. Yeah.
There's something wrong with your product. And I mean, I grew up in the 90s indie world. So we saw all the grunge bands get picked up and the decimation of the like college rock scene, all the SST, Lookout, and sub pop bands just gone in 1 year, or 3 years. And so it felt like music in the underground went anti-music until the late 90s, until we saw the Strokes and White Stripes and people like that come back. It went into this like kind of post-rock, anti-music, you'll never understand us world. That was kind of like, fine, if we're not part of this major thing, then we're going to be noise bands or like difficult math rock bands where you're never going to know what's coming next. And on a level, it's an exercise, like listening to Frank Zappa or Captain. It's like an exercise in, stretching your brain musically, but it's not so much fun. It's much more fun to listen to a song that takes you on a journey and makes you feel an emotion,
Sure.
So anyway, I don't know. I'm a serpentine talker. I'm going all over the place. I'm sorry.
It's wonderful and a lot of great advice there.
I don't have to go just yet. So if you have any other questions, I'm still sitting here.
No. Well, again, thank you so much. This is really, really cool. So maybe some getting into your own philosophy with production and mixing and kind of some experience. I mean, I'd love to hear, working with Jack White and kind of diving into his process a little bit.
Yeah, well, these last 3 records, I did the Dead Weather record with him in 2008, and that was like on tape, 8-track, get in there and play. Some of the songs are first or second takes. I think we did 7 of the songs on that record, on the Sea of Cowards record. And it was done fast. And it was the kind of thing like he would have an idea. He's drumming on the record, but then on one of the songs he decided to play, like, I Can't Hear You is the song that he decided to play guitar solo on. We had a couple of tracks open, and I remember we played the song, did another take. So we did 2 takes of it and got it on the second take. He's like, I got an idea for guitar. I want to play guitar. Give me a track for guitar. And it was like, so he jumps in on guitar and we roll through a take. And he's like, so I've heard the song 3 times in my life, And he's like, that was great, but I want to punch in on the pre-chorus. And then after the chorus and that little break, I want to punch in there. And then I got one other thing I want to punch in and touch up on. I was like, okay, I need a second. I'm going to write down the numbers because I don't know the song structure yet.
Right.
It's still just floating for me. I can't feel it. So I write down all the numbers, rewind the tape, press play, got it all charted out. I'm totally confident, get these punches, and the damn counter goes dead on the tape machine. It goes like, and shuts down, like, oh no, we're in the middle of it. He's out there like getting ready, So I grabbed Dean, the actual guitar player. I was like, Dean, you got to tell me when we get here. I got it written down where we're coming in. Tell me where this is at. And he's like, oh, okay. And so we're like counting together and like, here it comes. 3, 1. And I'm punching in. Okay. And then we're coming out. And then, we skip over like 8 bars and then punch in again and then punch out. And then there's another one like 16 bars later, And Jack goes, hey, I think I got it. He's just, guitar's off, headphones off. He's coming in. I'm like, I hope we got it. That just worked, Then we listen back and it's just like, you're just like, oh. Yeah. And it worked. And we totally made it. I was like, oh, I need to go like towel off, It's like, but that's what it's like. The tape world is like, it's like you're getting the takes and it's like moving, and so you better just go, And that happened on this record. There's on Fear of the Dawn. There's a song called Morning, Noon, and Night, and that was a moment like that where it was like, hey, I was in Michigan. He's like, hey, you want to come down tomorrow? And I want to track. I got a new song I want to track. It's like, cool, awesome, see ya. So drove down, run into the studio, set mics up, and that song, Dwayne Dennison from Jesus Lizard plays guitar on it. So Dwayne showed up, and I knew Dwayne. I hadn't seen him in 20 years, but I knew him from Chicago back in the olden days. Our bands played together, and I'd see him around all the time, And so it's kind of like a crazy, like, hey, Dwayne, oh my God, what's going on? And then set up and hurry and record. And we ended up tracking that song in like, just a few, like it was maybe like an hour, learning and playing and like everybody coming together and it just gelling. And we got a take on tape. So that one's all tape.
Yeah, it does seem like the one on that album that's a little different maybe from the other ones, or a little bit more of the throwback to that.
Yeah, because it just jumped in. It just jumped in.
Right.
And, but the process is like, it's from production standpoint, every record's different. Like at Key Club, it was a real residential place where there was like, there were dorm rooms upstairs and people would come and live with us. And I felt like over the years, labels that we got friendly with, like Domino and some of the other record labels, would send us bands that were maybe going to have problems finishing their records because they knew that we would get them done. Because husband and wife team were like, and no one's leaving the studio. We'd call it the submarine. You get in there, you're in the sub. And it was awesome out there for years because you get in the mindset of the record and you would just be encapsulated in it.
Right.
You'd live and breathe it. You would be in all day, every day, from the moment you woke up till you go to bed. And everybody got in the same rhythm. And that's really fun to be in that because it's so easy to create. You're just in creative mode all the time. And Benton Harbor, where the studio is like, outside, it's an hour and a half outside of Chicago, right around the lake. So it's a beachy port town. Cool. So it's got, untouched thrift stores and antique stores and like little, weird old restaurants and things. And so for bands to come out, it was like a checkout from their normal like grind. It was very common for people to go like, oh no, now we got to go back to New York or whatever, I just want to stay out here and keep making music. Yeah.
All right.
And that, over the course, that's a really fun. I like to be immersed in the writing process because it's so much more fun than just tracking. But if you have to just track, it's more fun to just dive in on a day like that, where you're like diving in and you're just like worrying about something, making it all happen. Get down, you feel like a performance as well. So, but you know,
also the time element, right? That you know that day is you're getting that song and
it's coming down.
Yeah.
But it takes an artist like Jack to make that, where he's just going to go in and he's going to come in a million, way over 100%, and just go.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then it's just happening, and it's fun. It's like your hair stands up on your arms. You know, you're like, whoa, we got it. Oh my God, that was a great take. You know, I can't believe that just happened. And you hear it, like, you know, the song's not happening, and it's not happening, and it's not happening, and then all of a sudden it just goes like that, and it finishes. Like, bingo! Holy smokes! Wow, moment. You know, and it gets captured. It doesn't matter what you recorded on; it gets captured. That energy goes in. But you know, that's a juxtaposition. Like this thing. These last two were like really. There was just a different thing happening on all of them. You know, some of it, Jack played everything on the songs. You know, it's just him layering things up. And it would be like, I've got this idea, play it on the piano, or play it and sing it. And it would be like, wow, that was great. What about, well, maybe we should put drums on it. Yeah, okay, cool. That was just a little something I had. Maybe we should put drums on it. Oh, put drums on it, you know? And then like it just kind of grows, you know, kind of just, some of the songs would grow like that. Some of them would be more totally written. So they were just a wild ride. Like, I think, you know, like the song "If I Die Tomorrow" the video just came out.
Right.
That song was a thing that just went, hey, I got this thing that I've been kicking around. Just give me a mic for vocal and acoustic. And then he goes in and plays it, and we're just like, oh my God. I was like, this is a fucking heavy song, man. This is like so heavy. And then we were like, yeah, do you think it should just stay acoustic? I don't know. And then it just kind of built, you know, in. Like, it just kind of came out of that with like Mellotron and put drums on it. And it was like, oh man, should we put electric guitar on there too? I guess so, you know? And it just kind of just manifested into this thing. And it all happened in one day. It was like, he came in the morning, like, hey, I got this little thing I want to put down. And then after the main performance of that was just like a mic and a guitar. And it was just like, it went down, and we were like, oh man. And then, okay, we should probably, like, this middle part's like a crazy kind of chorus part. And it just kind of manifested into this thing being that song. And it was really fun. That was that one was like I always say it's like a journey of discovery in there too, because you're like, the song kind of just takes you in the direction, you know, leads you in. So I don't know. I mean, every record's different. Some records, you're like, the band has the songs done and you're in there and just trying to worry about sounds. And some records, it's like, they're just snippets of songs and you're writing and trying to get them, and you're using the studio as a tool. And a lot of this was studio as a tool, you know, because there wasn't a formal band on anything. So some of it would be like morning and night band, getting people in the room and like getting them to gel, Dwayne and Dr., you know, and Quincy. And some of them were more like, holy smokes, this is just kind of coming out of the basic idea. And it's like, you're just on that path to try to find the magic button to press that makes it pop, you know? So these two records were combo meals of all of that.
Right.
And really fun, and really, really, really fun, because it was like pandemic world. No better time than to lock yourself in the studio and just kind of, you know, get creative. And it felt really, that part of it was like, oh man, it's so liberating. Yeah, I mean, you know, as far as like a theory goes for making records, it's just, I think you're bringing in, you know, I guess one of the most basic things that happens on every record that's kind of fun is that you're trying to curate some inspiration in the band. As a producer, you're always trying to curate some inspiration. So you've got an arsenal of things that you'll play for them and things that you'll stray away from playing because you want to keep people in an elevated state of creative, you know, a creative kind of mindset. So you don't want to bring people down. You don't want to like play something for them out of your record collection that's going to bum them out or like break them out of there or gross them out, you know? And we had a rule at Key Club that you couldn't watch late night TV. in the studio, because if you see another band on Conan or whatever,
Right.
it just infuriates everybody, especially if the band is too close. Someone that's a peer, and you're like in the midst of making your record, it's not done yet, and everybody's like, we got to get this record done. Our record sounds like shit. We got to redo this. You're like, calm down. It's like midnight. We've been listening loud all day. Of course, the snare drum doesn't sound right. We're not at that point. Our ears are. Of course, they're on a different album cycle. Don't worry about it. Their record just came out. When this record comes out, it's gonna be fine. But it just makes everybody like lose it. And you're trying to avoid that at all costs. And you're trying to elevate people into feeling supported and ultra creative. And you're trying to make people be able to translate that idea into reality as fast as possible without any impedance. And one of the things I always tell like assistants when people start out, or assistant engineers when they're working with me, it's like, look, we're in an analog studio. Things are going to break. Things always break. They're breaking constantly. It doesn't matter if you're paying $3,000 a day for a studio or $500 a day for a studio. Things are going to break. Don't announce it. Write it down, move along, and note it, but don't don't raise the alarm. Because if you raise the alarm about everything that breaks, the band is going to go, man, it was great, but the studio was broken. Everything was broken.
Right.
And every studio is always broken. Everything is always broken.
Yeah.
That's the rule of analog. Right. It's always broken. So don't just move along quietly. Don't pass that energy along to people. Right. And that's like kind of the golden rule of making records is keeping it elevated, keeping it creative, trying to diffuse problems. Realizing when people are like running out of steam, bring in a plate of cookies. We always joke because there's that TV on the radio record called Cookie Mountain. And that is something that happens on records is there's a Cookie Mountain and it makes people happy and they keep going. And that was a trick my wife used to do. She'd be like, it's Cookie Mountain time, isn't it? Yeah, it's either Cookie Mountain or Bagel Mountain, one of the two.
Right.
And, if you eat 7 bagels, you'll write a hit record. It's what happens. You eat 7 bagels in one day, you'll get hit. You got enough carbs to stay happy, and you see that kind of translate into the creativity, into the creative process. And it's just one of your deals about making records, whether you're engineering or producing or even mastering records, is to elevate the experience so people are excited and happy. Because that's when you get your best work. Yeah. And on that note, I got to go.
Yeah, that's a beautiful philosophy.
Well, if you have anything else you want to ask me, email me and I'll answer it. And I can
absolutely. This is wonderful, Bill. Thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate it, and I love your record.
Oh, thank you, brother.
Yeah, awesome. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, we'll be in touch.
All right, cheers. Bye.
Take care.